Welcome to the Sensible Center podcast, where two middle-aged guys drunkenly talk politics and political reform. Grab an adult beverage and enjoy the show. Further information can be found at sensiblecenterpack.com. You can reach us at sensiblecenterpack@gmail.com or follow us on X at USASCPack. All right. Hey, Bob.
Evan.
Oh, boy.
Post-election podcast.
This is not a good sound.
This is going to be fun. And today,
I'm doing the dance. I had to get up.
today we've got a special guest, a dear friend of both of ours for many years now, Allyson, who's
Hey,
here.
Allyson.
And I believe she also is our first elected official that we've had on the podcast, so this is really a double treat. Hi, Allyson.
Hello, gentlemen. Glad to be with you.
We're happy to have you. This is
Bob, I'm surprised. I know that seemed to be like your victory song already, but isn't that a gay anthem?
well, you know, I don't discriminate in songs that make me happy. If it makes me happy, it makes me happy. And I gotta say, I thought that was a great info, considering the occasion.
Bob, did I
Intro.
send you the video I shot from inside at Uber in Spain? And they were playing that song like on the day after the election. Did I send you that one?
You did not send me
Oh,
that.
I gotta send that to you. Oh, by the way, I've been in Spain. Did anything go on while I was gone? I haven't been following the news.
Well, I think we'll do a recap of the whole, what happened prior to the election, and of course we're going to talk about the election here a little bit, but so the election's over. I think we could sit and argue on whether or not it was as close as predicted or not, but it wasn't as close as I think people thought it was going to be. It's not as close as you and I thought it was going to be, that's for sure.
That is true.
Donald Trump has been elected, and the GOP has taken control of the Senate and retained control of the House. I don't know if actually I don't believe a week later, a little over a week later. Actually, is it 2 weeks now? It's probably 2 weeks later at this point.
Yeah,
I don't
time
know
flies.
if they're done counting the House votes yet. So, but
I saw that Bob Casey just conceded tonight in Pennsylvania, so flipped one more Senate seat. I have to give you kudos, Bob. You pretty much called it for the most part. Like you said, we were both kind of, with our predictions last time, we were both calling it a little bit closer. But Trump got 312. You said he was going to get 291. You said he was going to get 50%. I think he's sitting at 49.87% as we speak. There's a difference of, you said he was going to get 79 million. I think he's sitting close to 78 million votes. Where I missed the boat is I thought Kamala was going to get 83 million, and she ended up getting like 74. So I personally want to know where those 9 million votes went.
yeah, and your conspiracy theorists on the right are saying, well, that's proof that the last election was.
I've heard that from some of my conservative friends.
Yeah,
this proves that Biden stole 8 million votes in the last election. You're not saying that. Then.
No, I'm not saying that. I think there's lots of reasons there were less votes.
There were a lot of people dissatisfied with both candidates that people just stayed home.
Yeah, I think that's a large part of it. There was a lot more mail-in voting the last time, so and that's probably part of it too. It wasn't quite as easy. I don't think the ballot harvesting was as extensive as it was the last time. I did run down the electoral votes just from the last few elections, right? So as you stated, Trump had 312 electoral votes to Kamala's 266. When Biden won 4 years ago, he had 306.
Mm-hmm.
The first time Trump won, he had 304.
Okay.
And Obama's two elections, he had 332 and 365, which was far more than any president in recent history.
So I'm a little offended by the Republicans calling, and Fox News and Trump calling this a decisive mandate or a landslide, because clearly it is not.
He won the popular vote.
He did, which was unexpected. I'll grant you that. But when you compare to historical numbers, it's nowhere near a mandate or a landslide. Can we at least agree to that reality before we
Yeah,
talk about who attends the inauguration, how big the crowd is going to be?
I won't call it a mandate.
All right.
I do think if you look at the electoral map, his win was pretty impressive, and it's not the map itself, it's some of the counties. He won a county in Pennsylvania that hadn't been won since the 1800s by the Republicans. He gained double digits in blue strongholds like New York and Chicago. He only won Illinois by like 4 points or something. I mean, that's impressive. It tells you that either the Democrats are doing something drastically wrong, or his brand is a lot stronger than people thought it was. So
I think there's something to be said for his brand, and for people wanting change in general. I have heard that even from the Democratic side. And you want to talk about, what the Democrats are doing drastically wrong. I, as an elected official, as an elected Democratic official, I know exactly what we are doing wrong. I have a really strong sense of where we fell short. And these are things that I think a lot of us at the very grassroots level of the Democratic Party are seeing out there, but we have yet to affect that change all the way up to the Democratic leadership. And I think probably the first and foremost thing, Bob and Kevin, and if you guys want to, if you're ready to jump into this, I'm ready to jump all in, because I would love to hear, especially your thoughts, Bob, on some of these ideas. First and foremost, dealing with the issue of being the Democratic Party being seen as these elitist snobs, right?
I agree that well, they're being presented that way.
Yep, I would say that.
Yeah, it does feel like they've left the working class in some manner.
I've been thinking about this. When you guys were talking about the electoral college and breaking down where those votes came from. It really, and the one thing that stood out to me this year in breaking down the voting is the education gap. That somewhere in the realm of in the 80s%. You guys might have the actual figures in front of you of people with college degrees voted Democratic. But we have a numbers problem when it comes to that, because, only a third of the people in this country have a college degree.
Right.
And I would like to see more. I was thinking about this earlier today when I was looking at the numbers in the recent past as well, is college degrees need to be broken down more too, right? So if you were to look at economics degrees, and you were to look at MBAs, and you were to look at gender studies, and there's 50 other degrees out there that we could talk about, from a bachelor's to a master's, and then, across the spectrum of degrees. How does that vote break down?
Right. You're wondering if all the MBAs are voting Republican.
Right. I'm wondering if the majority of the MBAs are voting Republican, and what percentage of medical doctors are voting Republican versus Democrat, and, economists and
versus liberal arts or
right.
Or
right.
what? Or
because
what?
there are definitely also far more liberal arts degrees out there, where somebody with a sociology or gendered studies degree probably needs help paying off their college degree, because they may have cost somewhere between $50,000 and $150,000, and they're in many cases degrees like that pay $35,000 to $45,000 a year. It's going to influence the vote drastically compared to somebody who maybe is more capable of paying off their degree because they got a degree that resulted in higher pay.
I'm wondering too, Bob. I read an interesting statistic this week, and I was curious to hear your thoughts. Where in terms of an education gap, it seems like it's getting worse instead of better. I read a stat that said only 65% of the people in this country read at a 6th grade level. And that's
What percent?
65% of the people read above a only read at a sixth grade level.
Yeah, I don't know if that statistic's accurate or not. It would not surprise me. When you consider most of the people in the country are in larger cities, and larger cities seem to have a lower performance when it comes to education.
And our rural areas as well.
Yeah, well, that's fair. Yeah, there's that. When I chose where I was going to move in Tennessee, we chose a county with the best school districts, and some other counties we liked. We looked at the school district and the performance and how they were rated, and said, "No, we're not going to do that, right?" Because that's what's difficult. And you talk to teachers. I'm sure you have. I've talked to teachers who said, there's certain students that you want to teach, but you can't because you've got other students that are so far behind that if you teach to the level of the better students, then you're ignoring, the students who need the help the most. So
Absolutely. Well, I'm wondering, where and how if you're only reading at a sixth grade level and you're an adult, how are you able to parse what you see and hear every day from all media, not just the mainstream media, but all media, as to whether it's true, not true, how much weight should I give to this, how much critical thinking is going on?
Oh,
Yeah.
we have low information voters without a doubt.
The first thing I look for is buzzwords. If somebody's writing something and there's words that create instant emotion, and there's not a lot of statistics in there, chances are it's BS, and it's gaslighting. And
You and I and Kevin, we're all college graduates. That's how we would parse things. Do our neighbors who are reading at a sixth grade level have the critical thinking skills to be able to parse what's being tossed at them day in and day out on those kinds of levels? And how do they distinguish what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's not?
yeah, and I think part of it depends on age too, right? Because if you're 18, maybe TikTok is influencing you a little more, and if you're 45, it's your coworkers, right? So it's your union, or it's your who's paying your bills, what's going to bring you more customers or less customers,
Or and if you're 18 years old and getting all of your information from TikTok, do you have have you learned those critical thinking skills to be able to look at TikTok with a jaundiced eye?
Right.
The thing is, looking at how Kamala ran her campaign.
Can I interrupt before we kind of continue on this line? Because I had a couple more things I wanted to cover on the results, and I don't think it's as I don't like to awfulize about one party or another, and I think the media is sort of pushing that, like the Democrats all getting into hand wringing, what went wrong, blah blah blah, which is good to look at, but just to point out, of the swing states, the Democrats took 4 out of 5 of the Senate races, while Kamala lost. The Democratic senators won.
The down ballot races.
Yeah, the down ballot races in Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Nevada.
Is also the Republicans in North Carolina are also about to lose their supermajority
Right.
in their state Senate.
They only flipped 1 seat in the House and 4 in the Senate, which were fairly predictable except for Pennsylvania. West Virginia, Montana, Ohio, I think all were set to go. Pennsylvania was 20,000 votes. Casey just conceded tonight on that one. So that gives me an indication it was a little bit more complex than Democrats versus Republicans. The Republicans should have picked up way more in the House
She was a
and
terrible
the Senate
candidate.
if it was.
She was a terrible
yeah,
candidate.
we could go into that, and I don't go there. I go even further back as the primary reason for this. But you guys could continue your discussion. And I would like to point out that we're not talking about a contested election at this stage, in either case. And I'm glad, but I don't think it would have. I don't think it would have happened if the same results were reversed.
I do 100%. I do, because we were primed as a quote unquote an electorate audience
Yep.
that no matter what the outcome was, if Kamala won by 1 or 20 million.
Yes, exactly. That's what I was saying. If I didn't say it correctly.
Yeah, I
And
don't know. I don't know.
I
I mean,
know
I
you
think
don't know.
I think
But
the
I
general
think
electorate would not have had a stomach. If it was 20 million, it's one thing. If it's one, it's another. But I think the general electorate wouldn't have had a stomach for that sort of fight. It would have been kind of a tune-out. I don't doubt that Trump would have, started doing some things in court, but I think he did a lot of the work in court ahead of the election this time rather than post-election. I think that
well,
maybe potentially made a difference.
that was also a point too, that the Republicans did a lot of work within the system, which again would raise questions, but of course no questions have been raised. Just pointing out that one side respects the election results generally and the other side generally does not, which is a big deal to me.
That is a huge deal, Kevin. That, and
Do you see any fighting in the down ballot races? I mean, the ones the Democrats won that were even close. Do you see
Well, it's the party
Republicans
of Trump
challenging
now.
that, especially in
It's the
Arizona
party of
with
Trump.
Lake?
It's the party of Trump. So since he won, they're all good, right?
yeah, that's absolutely the case. But I agree with Kevin that if it had gone the other way, Bob, I think that regardless of whether we all as a public have a stomach for it or not, I think there would have been a lot of wrangling that went on. And several of my friends were concerned that if Trump lost, that we were going to see real violence around a takeover of power or a change of power. That January 6th was the least of problems that would have happened.
Yeah, I think conservative violence, if it was to happen, wouldn't be because of an election. It would be over taxes. That's honestly how I think.
Well, it sounds like they're not going to have any problem with those for a while.
Well, we'll get into more of the economics of the Trump election as we move through the podcast here. But
so I just wanted to bring that up because I thought that was an important point. And AP called the election on Wednesday night, and honestly, you got 1.6. Trump doesn't even have a majority of the vote. It doesn't look like he will have a majority of the vote. I'm glad that we don't have a contested election and going through all that stuff, but that's a large price to pay for what we're gonna see for the next 4 years. But I'm just glad that we don't have that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad we don't have that.
Absolutely.
So, do you want to move on to cabinet picks?
Well, I still have a number of points that I would love to share with you guys.
We still got a lot to talk about what happened here.
Yes, under what happened. And Bob, you touched on it a little bit and started to go there. But and Kevin, I don't want to feel like I'm just beating the Democrats down. But again, I think there's some real things that we really have to face and that we have to find a way to work around because, in the TikTok world, perception is everything, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And that perception that, of the elitist, educated looking down on our nose, that is really, it's really draining on people who are struggling with the cost of living, one of the things that's been really, that I have been kind of beating the drum with, and I think my family is is tired of me of being on my soapbox about this over the last few years, is that the economy is roaring, by all measures, the economy is roaring, but the measures are not the right measures. They're the wrong measures. The economy is measuring how well the economy is doing for rich people. So, but, the stock market is up. Company coffers are overflowing. They're all doing stock buybacks. We got money. Things are doing great. People who already owned their home in 2018 are doing fabulously at the moment because their houses have doubled in value.
And they've still got a very cheap interest rate if they don't if they have a payment at all. Yeah.
Correct, absolutely. Or for those people who did start to struggle, they were able to do some sort of cash out refi, maintain the same interest rate, and pull all the equity out, and have so their pockets are overflowing. I get it. So by all of those typical economic measures, the economy is doing great.
Here's the thing, though, right? Is our government interest on our government debt is just as significant as the spending on our military, right? And when you take that and then also consider all the money that we're pouring into wars, Ukraine, Israel, etc., it's not just the opinion of the less fortunate on the economy. It's also wars. And Democrats used to be the party that was against war and against fighting, and now they're spending billions and billions in Ukraine, and they're the ones at least seen to be supporting the billions and billions in funding for Ukraine, and both parties are seen to be funding the billions and billions that we're spending funding Israel, right?
Yeah, and to your point, Bob,
wars.
I think that
people don't
that's
like
not even about war. That's about sending money overseas for rebuilding other countries, for fighting foreign wars where people are like, what about me?
Yep.
Which is a big deal. I mean,
Well, and looking at the actual cost of living. So people, for the 2/3 of people that don't have a college degree, right, who are working jobs that used to be factory jobs, that maybe used to be construction jobs, that used to be
Mining.
all of that mining, all of those middle class jobs, right? They're either gone or they're not paying as much anymore. So for those people, the cost of living, the wages since 2019, wages have not kept up with, food has gone up 40% since 2019. When we measure inflation and we measure inflation against last year, everybody's excited. Inflation's only gone up 1.5%. Well, no, not really, because the last 3 years
It's like 2.3, I think, right now, or 2.8, something
exactly.
like that.
But the 3 years before that, it jumped 10% a month, and that compounding inflation, not year over year inflation, but that compounding inflation has your grocery store bill going up 40% since 2019.
It's fighting me. Yeah.
Housing going up for people who are renters. Housing going up 40% or more since 2019. And for those people who are not in the technology sector or the financial sector, regular people with regular jobs, their wages may have risen some, maybe 10%, which everybody's excited about. But when the cost of everything has gone up 40%, you're falling in a hole. And that is pissing people off. And us as the Democrats we are going rah, rah, rah about Bidenomics, and we are not paying any attention to those people who are falling in that hole.
but here's the thing, Allyson. Having traveled around the world, gratefully, over the last couple of years, we have it better off on a lot of those issues. I know it doesn't matter to a lot of people, but everywhere in
They
the
don't
world,
care.
it's suffering. I know, but it's not unique to our situation, and it's a.
When it comes down to casting your vote for president, no one cares.
I know that's why they've kicked out incumbents throughout the world for that reason, and that's why we shouldn't have ran an incumbent.
Especially if you consider minority, specifically African American communities. All of what Allyson just said about the overseas spending and that stuff bothers them. And then the spending on the illegals. The illegals are filling the cities. They're being given hotel rooms, taking up shelters right across from schools. They see them being given all this money while they've been struggling for years and years and years in the inner city. And it's the black vote in dramatic fashion took a turn towards Trump. Yes, exactly.
The other part of this is yet again, the Democrats failed and underestimated how little the African American population and Latino population in this country care about cultural issues. They could give a shit about LGBTQ people's rights unless they are one themselves. They could give a shit about abortion, right? The issues of abortion and LGBTQ protections are so far down on the list of things that matter to the Latino population and the African American population. They voted with how they feel in their lives. Bob, you are absolutely correct, 100%.
Here's my take on the cultural issues, Allison. The Republicans bring it up, and they chased abortion for years, and then the Democrats bite at it. Republicans bring up wokeness, and Democrats chase the issue.
Yeah.
Because Republicans offer those people nothing as far as economics go. To me, they offer them nothing. Their agenda is not their agenda. But they get the Democrats to bite on the cultural issues. And what did Trump present besides securing the border and raising tariffs, which is a horrible economic issue for the people you just talked about?
I think Trump has been very friendly to the LGBTQ community. I think, the T portion of that, there's a lot of arguments that I think are fair, that are kind of outside the rest of the LGBTQ. He's been fair. He's not.
Do you know supporters in that group?
I don't think he's been a bigot in that manner.
Do you know any supporters in that
of the LGBTQ group?
Yeah, that support Trump.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, and there's plenty of them on the internet as well. Of course, the internet, take it with a grain of salt. It is what it is. I know Fox has a few people on as well, but yes, I know a few of them, and they'll tell you the same thing. The Trump brand doesn't harm them at all. He's not talking negatively about them. All the negativity and the division, in their opinion, the ones I've talked to, it's been drummed up by the Democrat Party. Or not, I shouldn't say the Democrat Party, the left-leaning media, right? Trump hates you. Trump wants to end you.
Well, and I would counter that. I would counter that, Bob, by saying that I'm surprised that they're not on Fox News saying, "Oh well, Trump loves you. He'll care for you." Just like he wants to care for women at any cost, whether they want it or not. I think that there's something to be said there. I actually wrote that down. There was a very interesting piece in the Atlantic this week. I don't know if either of you read it, about the influence and about the world that people who live in the right-wing media and only live in that bubble, the reason that their worldview is so different than what's really going on in the world. No wonder they think people who only watch Fox News and only listen to podcasts that Fox News, prefers, and only listens to right-wing people on YouTube. No wonder they think this guy is a savior, because that's all they say. Trump will fix it. Trump will fix it. Trump will fix it. And they're not the ones publishing articles, Kevin, to your point, about, any kind of tariffs that Trump thinks he wants to levy on it is going to, raise prices in this country by astronomical amounts. And, as you said, kill the working lives of many people at the very bottom. That was something that I found very interesting, is that, the worldview is so different. And that there's no penetration for a lot of these people who live only in that world. There's no way to get to them.
That's the scariest thing about it, Allison. At the end of the day, I mean, we could talk about policy, we could talk about whatever. I'm fine with that. But a different, is wokeness the right way to go? As identity politics hurts the Democrats. I would agree with that totally. And they've pushed it too much. The pendulum swung too far, and the country's not ready for it. Eventually, we might get there. They've pushed it too much. But the fact that the reality that people live in, I'm like, what happens if Trump institutes policies that are horrible, that affect these people in a bad way, but that the echo chamber keeps on telling them it's fine or somebody else is to blame? I'm like, where do we go from there, right? That's what frightens me more than anything. And I'm not saying that echo chamber doesn't occur on the left also, but I would say you're not comparing apples and oranges.
No, not even close. Not even close, Kevin. And I tried, as an elected official, I tried really hard to see the other side, right? I that's just part of how I approach my job with responsibility, and also, too, to be a good citizen of this country, right? You got to hear it both. But, as someone that can do the critical thinking, it is very difficult for me to understand and hear things that are so at odds with what I'm so at odds with what I know to be true, and that may be true for people on the other side as well. I understand that.
Yeah,
Here's the
I mean,
thing.
it does, but
When we talk about what Democrats should do differently, right? Because I think that's pretty much the conversation we're having right now. Is I think they're starting to see it. Just AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, right? Just in the last couple of weeks, she changed her bio on Twitter or X. She removed the pronouns from her bio, and she called herself a representative up until then. Now it's Congresswoman. So the party seems to be trying. They recognize this issue they're having with the wokeness and how it's perceived, especially in the minority factions that they're trying to attract. They really need to take it a step further. Stop with the virtue signaling. I think it's well established that the term Latinx is offensive to Latinos, right? Stop with that garbage. Whoever's telling you that you should be doing that in the first place, and it's looking backwards now, whatever the next term is, stop, right?
yeah, but I think all those are. Tell me those issues affect people's daily lives in any meaningful way. And I agree. I don't disagree. I don't disagree with what you said. I'm just saying that's a distraction. That's a distraction from what's really going on. That's all a distraction.
Yeah. Culture is important to certain people, right? In certain culture is more important than others. I just think I've got an Italian heritage. At least part of my heritage is Italian. Part of my heritage is Irish. And when I see previous generations of my family, they often reference our heritage, and they often, there's nothing like going home for the holidays and having some Italian cookies or a whole bunch of booze for the Irish side. It's a joke. I do like booze, but that was a joke. Anyway, I mean, same thing.
I'm going to wait to see how you bring this one back.
The same thing's going to happen in the Latino communities, right? Or the African American communities. Their heritage is important to them, and white people making up new words to describe them is going to be offensive. And it might not swing votes by itself, but it's going to swing votes. It's another needle on the haystack, right? So, I mean,
I'm not saying it helps.
It doesn't matter if you're
I'm
white or black or brown or yellow. Everybody's got concerns that are serious. Inflation is a concern. Allyson talked about that a little bit earlier. Illegal immigration is a concern to everybody. It's not just conservative white people. Like I said earlier, right?
Bob, I'm going to stop you right there and tell you 100% agree with you. As a Democrat, I agree with you on the illegal immigration to this country.
I haven't heard anyone I've talked to, right or left, say that the immigration situation in this country is good.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute then, guys, because here's my take on it, right? My take on it is this. I'm not against immigration. I want to encourage people to do it legally. I think we have caps for a reason. I think that the people who are fleeing problems in their country and coming across the border, I get that some of them are coming because they're being pursued for dangerous reasons or cartels or whatever. I get that. But the vast majority of people coming to this country right now in droves are coming for economic reasons.
No doubt.
And the reason and the problem with that I have, even as a Democrat, Kevin, and as a compassionate person, the problem I have with that is that's illegal. There is a law.
And it leads to more law breaking, like stealing IDs.
You can't come to this country because you want a job.
And then we're giving them money, right? We're giving them welfare.
And let me address that a little bit, Bob, too. So here's my take on that. The problem with it is, what do they say? A quarter of Venezuelans have left Venezuela and are coming to this country, okay? A quarter of another country. A quarter of another country. The problem with immigration that we're having now is there's too many of them at once.
Yep.
And I don't care if they're black, white, green, purple, or blue. There's too many of them. I don't care what country they come from. Outside of this country, I don't care. There's too many of them at once. And the problem that we're having is we already have a housing problem in this country. We can't house all the people that we have here right now. When Bob, just like you said, when you've got people who are struggling and suddenly, 300 people end up in a hotel next door and they're getting free meals, that's going to piss you off. And it should. We need to think about...
Or hitting you on the highway and not having car insurance.
We need to think about immigration in terms of a logistical problem. It is not a problem against people. It is not a problem against other countries. It is not a problem against people's plights. It is at its base a logistical problem.
And this, yes, spending and a resource problem.
It is a resource problem. You are absolutely correct.
And a wage problem.
Again, not a problem
And a housing
that's not
problem.
being encountered by literally many other countries in the world, many other
here's the
industrial
thing.
countries.
Here's the thing, though,
So,
Kevin,
so,
right? Canada
so
just
that's
said-
number
Trudeau
one.
just
Number
said this
two,
week, he
it's
said,
just going to get worse.
We're cutting the
It's just
immigration
going to get
off.
worse with climate change because there's going to be climate change migration also that's going to continue to ramp up. So this is not going to go away by itself. So who's looking to solve that issue? I think we need more legal immigration. Definitely, from what I've heard from people who try to get here legally, it's not easy. It's nearly impossible. So we need to up the number of our quotas for people legally. We need to secure our border because our borders are border. We should not allow people to cross illegally. Then you get into the question of, okay, we allowed all these people to come in. What do you do with those people?
Here's what we do is we find any business caught hiring an illegal, $100,000 a head a day, and then these people will leave because they'll have no job, and then they can come in legally. That's what you do.
And then what I keep saying is what they had to do in downtown Chicago. Kevin, there's nowhere to house these folks, and then people are getting upset because they're living in tents like concentration camps. Well, guess what? That's what's going to happen because that's our only option because we have nowhere to put them physically. It is we have a logistical problem.
Well, and you have cities, and credit to Chicago here, right? Because you've got mayor of Denver and mayor of Los Angeles right now saying we're not going to cooperate with ICE, and if Trump tries to deport these people, we're not going to let anybody come in and deport these people out of our cities, right? You can see it happening already. What's going to happen is you're going to have conservatives sending 3, 4, 5, 10 times the busloads of these people to these cities, right? And Chicago, you notice our mayor, and you also notice Eric Adams, because he's learned a little bit, hasn't said anything.
Well, and this past week in Chicago, I thought it was interesting that they finally integrated the last of the migrants into the community and are not housing them all together in spaces. Like they're not taking over a whole hotel and they're not putting them in a whole tent anymore. And I mentioned to my husband, I said the reason that the mayor of Chicago is integrating them is because otherwise they are a distinct target. So if you've got 300 migrants living in a hotel, it's really easy for ICE to come in and round up all 300 of them. Or if they're all living in one place in a tent, it's real easy for ICE to come in and round up everyone.
It's not going to be ICE. It'll be the U.S. military, it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't know the legality behind that. I haven't really read into it, whether that's legal or not.
What?
Using the military to get these people out. But if it is, that's correct.
If you declare a
It's legal,
national
that's what we're
emergency, I think the Supreme Court views executive power pretty strongly right now. I don't think anyone's going to stop them.
They may delay them.
Here we are, and now we have all these people here in this country that should not be here because we have a logistical problem.
So you're on the side of we need to get some of these people out of here.
Enough is enough. Enough.
We need
is
to
enough.
get them out.
I do not agree with immediately giving all of them work permits. I do not.
Okay.
If that means that they have to go back to where they came from, they self-deport, then so be it. And the expectation that people would come here and immediately be able to work and find housing and do all this stuff, I want to send back the message to their countries that is not the case. We have a logistics problem here. You can't just come.
I think that's a big deal with it is the messaging and the perception that, hey, we could do this. And
Yeah, and that's part of what the
shame
problem
on
was with Biden.
Shame on Biden and the Democrats for letting that message go out for 3.5 years before waking up.
Yeah, enough is enough. Enough is enough. Like, no, we can't take any more asylum seekers right now. Sorry. Well, enough is enough. We're full. Like, seriously, it's it's going to be, I hate to say it, but like when the people come to the border, we need to put out the moose and like see what the moose said out front. We're closed.
Marty Moose. Sorry, folks, we're closed.
You also need some
Candy out
protection
there.
on the border, right? We've got a wide open border, middle of the desert, in
Yeah, of course.
our western Texas or Arizona, New Mexico. There's not a lot of protection. Like anybody who wants to walk over there, they can just walk over there. And
Well, I think that, I am also not against, beefing up the border patrol.
you
I,
have to.
I think that's a fair. I think the wall is a terrible idea because I think it's just throwing money away. But I think that beefing up our border protection is a really good idea. I think that would be fantastic. And I just, I know it's not a popular opinion among the Democrats, but like I said, I just have to look at this the way that. I have to look at the world the way that an average person is looking at the world, and to see it from their point of view and in their eyes, and to say, no wonder this doesn't look fair to people in our country who are our citizens, who are our people, who were, I completely understand 100%, and I am empathetic to the people here and to our homeless and our hungry, that really need to be better taken care of, than the logistical challenges that we have from the folks coming in.
So would you say, I mean, there was a bipartisan immigration and border bill that I think it's pretty well established that Trump killed so he can run on the issue.
It was
He
going to
didn't pay
legalize.
any price for that
It
in
was
this
going to
election. He
legalize a
didn't
lot of
pay
the
any
people who
price
came
for
in
that.
illegally.
That's ridiculous, Bob. That he
It
didn't
was
pay
going to
any
legalize
political price for that.
millions of people that came here illegally.
Bob, it was a bipartisan bill. You're not always going to get everything you want. You need to compromise on certain things.
Well, the
And so we got a lot of issues solved in
Congress,
that bill,
the
and a
House-
lot of that weren't.
The House and the Senate.
And it would have passed
Worked for the
had he
people,
not thrown
not
his
Trump.
had he not thrown
I
his
disagree.
weight behind it, and he didn't
People
pay
knew
a
about it.
political price for it, and that's wrong.
People knew about. Kevin, I didn't support that bill.
Because you imagine that you could get everything you want. You have to compromise.
Look,
It's
but-
not a great bill. Nothing's going to be perfect. And if you think we're going to solve immigration by having a perfect bill that one side or the other is going to agree with, you're crazy.
So you're going to say to
Nobody's
the general
gonna like the
populace
bill.
that
Nobody's
millions
gonna
of
like
these
the
people
bill.
came over to the border. A large portion of those people stole other people's IDs. We're going to forgive all that, but you got a speeding ticket and you got to pay it. Do you think
You could get into
how
the
does that-
details of
how-
any
how do
bill,
vo-
Bob.
How are voters going to
There are
respond
things
to
that you're not going to like, and there are things you're going to like. That's what a compromise is.
Vibes matter. Vibes matter, right? Kamala.
He killed a bill
Ran
that
on
was
that.
negotiated over a long period of time, and he didn't pay a price for it, and people allowed him to run on that. That's just wrong. I don't care how you call it.
This
was
is
a garbage
this is
bill.
kind of a long-standing grievance that I have, Kevin, in terms of being able to get things done in politics. Going all the way back to the Republicans not allowing Merrick Garland to be confirmed.
Yeah.
I mean,
He was a terrible attorney general.
there are parts of me, I was so angry right after the election that, I just feel like there are some parts of the Democratic Party where we have to grow some balls.
You want to? Have you watched the James Carville documentary?
Many places where the Democrats have to grow some balls. And we have to put a stop and find a way to put a stop to some of these Republican political games that are just bullshit and them going roughshod over our norms.
You're absolutely right.
That is so offensive to me as a human and as a woman in this country. And maybe we should talk about that a little bit, guys, too.
So Allyson, you're right on that point. You're right on that point, and Jon Stewart made that point, and I suggest you watch James Carville's documentary. That guy has been so right on that point for a long time. And they don't listen to him. They didn't listen to him about Biden getting out. They didn't listen to him about, he's like, you're taking, this is a knife fight or this is a gunfight and you're taking a knife.
That's exactly how I feel sometimes. Like, I feel like the Democratic Party is like a golden retriever. Right? We're happy. We love everybody. And then like somebody does something and we just roll over, like pet my belly. No, it's time to stop being golden retrievers. And we don't need everybody to be a pit bull, but we need some pit bulls because God knows we are now in a pit bull, like we are in a Michael Vick dogfight. Okay?
Here's the thing. Speaking of dogs and animals, right? I think it should be acknowledged that Trump very well may owe his election to a squirrel. Did you guys read about Peanut the squirrel? Do you know who Peanut the squirrel was?
Oh, yes. Where the people, the guy had the pet and what state was that in, Bob?
That was in Michigan, right? So the blue state of Michigan that voted red. This guy had a TikTok channel with a squirrel and a raccoon. Millions of followers. People watched his videos. Somebody reported him to the authorities, and a week before the election, the authorities came in, raided the guy's house, killed his famous squirrel, killed his famous raccoon, and it was all over the internet about the government killing pet squirrels and pet raccoons and how government overreach is a problem, and this is a perfect example of it. It went viral. And of course, there's memes all over the internet with Trump protecting a squirrel and the raccoon. It was viral, and it matters.
I'll tell you, Bob, exactly how siloed our media interests are. I read about the story in the New York Times and never saw another thing about it. I never saw a meme, and of course, I never saw how Trump was the savior, right? But I'm sure he is the savior, right?
All over the internet, all over Twitter, Facebook. Yep.
See, I left Twitter. There's a reason for that. Not the least of which was our friend who decided the day after the election that he was going to post on there. One of Elon Musk's friends posted, "Your body, my choice, forever." Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw that one at all.
Yeah, there's context there.
No, it's more important about the raccoon and the squirrel. That's more important than that. That's the problem I have. That people got distracted by the raccoon and the squirrel, and if that affected their vote rather than what Allyson just described, shame on our country.
I'm confident it affected the youth vote, and that's what you get when you're courting, 18, 19, 20-year-olds. I'm not diminishing their importance or their relevance or their, them being participants in our society. All I'm saying is when you target the youth vote and you bring the youth vote out, that sort of stuff is going to matter.
Yeah, and like I said, and then the next day, the day after, when you have 19-year-old influencer incels who wonder why they can't get a date, or definitely why they're never going to get laid, posting things on the internet like "Your body, my choice, forever," and wondering why women are getting extraordinarily upset.
Yeah, I'd want to visit the context on that.
I want to visit the context. The context is right here. My comment to that was, and I told the same thing to my 19-year-old daughter, if anybody ever says that to you, they're not going to get a chance to make a choice about their reproductive health. Because I'm going to make that choice for them with my foot. And I'm not kidding about that. Because I dare anyone to say that to my face. Or to, And the reason that they're saying it on Twitter is because they feel safe there. And that's the reason that so many people have left Twitter. Something like, 30 million people left Twitter this week? There's a reason for that.
So I'm going to, I don't know. I will, I'm trying to find that Twitter post.
About what?
Your body, my choice.
Oh.
But the problem is, there's so many posts with that phrase on here right now that I can't find the original one.
So while you do that, I want to bring up.
That tells me right there, Bob, the fact that there's so many you can't find the one.
Well, it's not. Yeah, but it's people commenting on it, right? So.
So let me back up. Do we think we'd be having this discussion if last year, this time, as Mr. Biden, President Biden, was sitting around his dinner table and they all told him not to run and he decided not to run, do you think we'd be having this conversation right now?
No.
No, we would not. Bob, do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay. So
Josh Shapiro, not Josh Shapiro.
Gavin Newsom.
No, the governor of Pennsylvania.
yeah, Josh Shapiro.
Josh Shapiro.
Yeah, I mean, he could have
and he
won.
would have won, and we would be sitting here, and he would have won the vote, and then we would be sitting here now discussing whether or not the disgruntled Trump people are going to burn down the country.
So one party changed out their horrible candidate.
I like to think that Tulsi Gabbard would have won.
Would have won for the Democrats?
Yeah.
I know what you like to think in your dreams, Bob.
I mean,
that's just a dream, Bob.
Yeah.
there are Democrats that I do like. She was one of them. Right?
At least we could all agree, and I always get back to that, and we started talking about it last year, Bob. It was a slow-moving train wreck. One side traded out their horrible candidate for way too late. I didn't like the way it was done, but by the time he left, I don't see how it would have been done any differently. Carville said they should have just put 5 candidates up and fought it during the convention, and it would have gotten great ratings. Maybe he was right. It would have attracted energy and attention to the party. It would have, this is all hindsight, obviously. Who knows? It could have been a disaster. It could have worked out. But if they actually had Joe backed out at the right time, I don't think there was any way Kamala was going to get the nomination. All the issues about tying inflation, everything they tied to this current administration would have been out the window, right?
It would have been moot.
So what he would have had to run on something himself, which he's not capable of. So I don't think it would have been too close, to be honest with you. And shame on the Democrats for not seeing that well in advance,
and that's,
when most of the country did.
You can't blame the party.
Oh, I could blame the
when
party.
Trump won the primary.
Who?
Trump won a primary. You can't blame the party for not changing their candidate when he won. And the fact is,
I blame them for just folding into his cult of personality. I do blame them that they don't. That
he won the general the day
nobody
he was
stepped up
shot
to him.
In the air.
Nobody stepped up to him, and they could have.
He won the general the day he was shot in the air, man. He really did. I think that changed everything. I don't think Kamala ever had a chance. I mean, if the one chance she might have had is if it had changed within 3 weeks, maybe 3 weeks out from the election, she might have had a chance because she definitely had a bump. She had a vibes bump.
Absolutely. And honestly, there's a part of me that wishes that they would have moved Biden out of the way even later, because she peaked in about the end of September, beginning of October.
She was not popular when she ran against Biden. She's just a terrible. She had $1 billion in her pocket 3 months before the election. And she finished the election $20 million in debt. She spent $1 billion in 3 months. And to the average person, I think what that says is this person definitely could not manage money. We're already in crazy debt. It looks terrible. And I know it's not a one-to-one apples to apples comparison, but it just looks absolutely terrible. She spent $1 billion in 3 months. She had $1 billion. She spent $20 million in 3 months to lose an election. It's crazy.
I'm saying she was put in a tough position. She didn't do that great. I think she should have stayed, as I said on this podcast several times. She should have stayed in the vibe mode.
Yes. She
turned direction, like Allyson pointed out, late September, early October, and then she started losing ground. She should have just went, we're doing something. She gave some bad answers saying that, there wouldn't be anything I changed from the Biden administration. She didn't distance herself that much from Biden.
That one answer pretty
should have
much,
went after him.
ended
She
her
didn't
campaign.
use him, and she didn't go after him.
No, and she, and I understand the not being able to throw somebody under the bus, but she did not differentiate herself to say, Joe was good, but here's what I'm going to do better.
Here's what I'm going to do different. And that's what people needed to hear. I wasn't, vice presidents don't have power. I wasn't in the driver's seat. He was, like you said, the Dems treat it with kid gloves, and people don't want to see that. People want to see somebody who's willing to fight, and
The other part of that, Kevin, too, is that, she had a great opportunity to talk about policy and a lot of it. And what we want to do differently and how it will make your life better. I don't know if I ever heard her say, here's what we're going to do to make your life better.
I mean, she did have some things, some programs, some down payment programs,
But it was all vague. It was vague. There were never any specifics, and it never resonated.
She was afraid of alienating the left, and she was also afraid of speaking to the right.
Well, and in the end, she ended up alienating everybody by joining forces with all the former Republicans, the Never Trumpers. That just made everybody pissed off. Because I'm certainly, absolutely, there was a time in my life where Cheney was absolutely the embodiment of evil. The guy was the devil.
Yep, embracing him and his daughter.
Exactly, and now we're buddying with him. No wonder people on the left are pissed. Pick a side, people. Take a fucking stand.
It made him look like the pro-war party. It really did. Spend more money on war. They're now talking about just missing Ukrainians or Ukraine's debt. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Well, when you talk about war, Bob, here's another very unpopular opinion in this country. When it comes to Gaza, enough is enough. Now, I yes, the idiots, they
let them handle their own trouble.
Israel, okay, Israel got him back, okay? In the first 30 days of that war, Israel, got him back in Gaza for the incursion. Great. But now, where we are now we're in genocide. Enough is enough.
Yeah, here's the thing, though, right?
It's not our fight, and we need to cut them off. And I know that we basically created Israel, we prop them up, we give them money, we give them weapons. Enough is enough.
If Canada invaded our country and killed the same percentage of women and men, or killed the same percentage of people and raped the same percentage of women of our populace, we would end it, right? We would absolutely end it. And I support Israel's right to do the same. I'd be very upset, considering pretty much everybody in Israel knows multiple people that got killed, and there's sons and daughters. And, you never want to think about your child being treated like some of the women were treated on October 7th over there. That said, we shouldn't be funding it. America should not be funding it because it's not our fight. So
it's not our fight.
That's the difference. I completely support Israel and their right to handle the situation as they see fit. I do not support American dollars over there.
Now, on the flip side of that, Bob, let's talk about the other war then, the Ukraine war. Now, this is a declared U.S. adversary trying to invade a country that was on the verge of joining NATO. And why we waited so long to give them the heavy weapon, Ukraine just started firing our heavy weapons at them this week. Why we waited so long?
Yeah.
Why didn't we do that in the first 2 weeks of the damn war and put Russia back on their side of the border like they should be? And now they've got North Koreans fighting for them, and we finally are just now bringing out the big guns. Why didn't we do this 2 years ago?
Here's the thing. If you took Russia's alignment with North Korea, and it's North Korea, Russia, I think Iran now. Some of those states kind of aligning together, sharing resources, and all of a sudden Mexico joined that. Like we have NATO, and they're on our border. Do you think America would react to it?
I honestly don't think that we would intentionally invade them.
If Mexico joined a union with Russia, China, North Korea,
No, we would firm up our border, and that's what we would do, because we would not invade them.
there's there's rumors that we had Wuhan type labs as well in Ukraine. Be concerning. And that's a rumor, right?
Yeah.
It's a rumor. That said,
Here's the thing, Bob.
we would be upset.
I think we could have negotiated our way out of it probably 5 or 10 years ago with Putin by saying, no, we're not going to bring Ukraine into NATO.
Yeah,
I mean, clearly their move to the West frightened him. And I agree. I think we would be similarly concerned. And I think historically he believes Ukraine is part of Mother Russia, and I think historically part of it has been. All that being said, as Allyson pointed out, would we have invaded? And towards Allison's point, Allyson, I think
Well,
we didn't want to start World War III.
threatened
Is why we didn't
war.
do
We
that.
threatened nuclear war over Cuba, right?
And I think we gave Putin a black eye. I've just read the book War by Bob Woodward. Biden didn't get as much credit for putting together the alliance that Putin would be in Kiev if it wasn't for Biden administration. Nobody believed that they. Zelensky didn't believe to the last minute that they were going to invade. Europe didn't believe to the last minute that they were going to invade. We kept on saying they're going to invade. We have the information. We called Russia on it. We called them repeatedly on it, saying, "Don't do this. Don't do this." We put together the alliance. Yes, we're 2 years into the war. Unfortunately, now we're having a change in administration. I think the war will end sooner because of Trump. I think they will have to give up territory. I don't know if Zelensky will be able to stay in power. I doubt it. So 2 years and lots of bloodshed and money will probably get us back to where we would have been 5 years ago on a negotiated basis. But
Not to
I
mention
think
the
Biden,
inflation that was caused as a result of it happening too, right?
Pardon?
The war fueled some of at least a portion of the inflation over here.
Yeah. Yes.
And now to your point, Bob. Now we have a whole country of people in the Ukraine, many of which do not want to be Russians, who are now going to be scattering to the United States and other countries in Europe looking for asylum because now they're gonna need to migrate because they don't want to be Russians, and we were not able to fully push Russia back to where it needed to be.
And Ukrainian leaders' wives are driving Bugattis around town, right? So, I mean, we funded a lot of politicians' toys. It's what and it looks terrible, right?
And Bob, I think we need to support our allies, but as we've discussed many times, I'm fine supporting allies, but we've got a huge debt situation, and we should get something back for that also. We shouldn't, as you pointed out, they're forgiving, the quote unquote forgivable debt on all the
billions.
the billions of dollars. And I don't agree with that. I don't agree with strapping a country with a lot, but they do have resources, and we are supporting them, and we should at least be getting some of that back in some way or another. And I think the average American thinks that.
You're a guy losing your house that maybe cost you $400,000 a few years back.
Right.
Well, we're giving $5.4 billion to Ukraine or whatever the exact figure is. Yeah, it's terrible. And if you're an average voter, because the Democrats are in power, it's going to affect your vote.
I think we should probably go on to, just to keep this in the time frame, go on to cabinet picks and what happens next. But I just want to I just want to point out to the prior point, I had an ABC poll. This was in the Carville documentary that in May 2023, Trump had 49%. In a WAPO ABC poll, 49%, and Biden 42% in May 2023. So clearly, he shouldn't have ran. I still think we jumped the shark as a country by reelecting him, but we could talk about what we think is going to happen next, how concerned we're going to be. Bob, you think we're going to be fine. I know that.
We're going to be fine.
Do you think we're going to be fine, Allyson? Do you feel fine?
Well, considering that there are people in this country, including people who live in the Fox News bubble, who are dear friends of ours, who as of August September had never heard of Project 25. I think 2025. I think we're fucked.
No, that's just a hoax. They just put that document up. That I don't know who wrote that. I think Antifa wrote that, didn't they, Bob?
Yeah.
I don't know who wrote it. I never read it.
Heritage
I have no
Foundation.
idea who wrote it.
Heritage Foundation wrote it.
Yes, the Heritage Foundation wrote it, and the chief architect is now going to be the guy in charge of the Office of Management and Budget.
Oh.
So let's talk cabinet picks.
What are you concerned about?
All right.
No, you can't imagine what I'm concerned about, Kevin. The list is longer. The list is longer than Santa's naughty list. Let's
Allyson,
put it that way.
I think we'll be fine. That's what I'll contend that maybe we'll be fine.
I'll bet you each a nice bottle of wine or beer or whiskey or whatever you want.
I always lose my bets to Bob,
Right?
so.
Yeah, I should have bet you on who was going to win this election because I knew. But anyway, so I will bet you everything's going to be fine.
Everything's going to be fine.
Not
That's going to be the name of this podcast.
There will not be a nuclear war. Our economy will not collapse. It doesn't matter who was elected. A recession is going to happen, right?
All right,
It was going to be the second term of either president, and
We set that
generally recessions happen in second terms.
Okay.
It's just kind of how economic cycles work or are orchestrated by the Fed. And I don't mean that negatively, honestly.
So
right?
expect a recession.
Expect a recession.
Probably a bad one.
I don't know about
If
I don't
Elon
know.
and Vivek have their way.
Well, yeah, government cutting would cause a significant dip. However, if you really do move a large portion of the illegals out, it's going to require a
More money.
significant increase in wages, right? So,
It's going to require a big spend of money.
so it should boost the
Yes.
job market.
Inflation will go up.
And
You're right.
you know what? Well, here's the thing: if you cut 25% of the government workforce and 50% of the illegals, there'll be plenty of jobs for the government workforce that lost their job.
Nothing
go.
he's saying makes economic sense, Bob. Let's just agree with that. Let's just hope he doesn't follow through on what he's actually saying.
All
right.
and I look at this through the lens of women losing healthcare and healthcare rights.
Nobody's losing any rights.
Nobody
It's
cares
the
about
state-
that, Allyson.
Nobody losing
cares.
any right. What rights are women losing?
What rights are women losing? Have you been paying any attention? Thank God I am here in Illinois, is all I have to say about that.
Okay,
Because
so you're not losing any rights.
I personally, in this spot where I am sitting in my office, am not losing my healthcare rights, okay?
Okay, so what states are women losing rights?
For places like Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, Tennessee, Bob.
Okay, so pick one of those states, and if you live there, what would you do?
I wouldn't live there to begin with. But I look at this
Okay,
also through...
so you didn't lose any rights.
I look at this through the lens of my niece, okay, who is an OBGYN in Michigan, all right? And Michigan is sometimes red, sometimes blue. And because of the uncertainty of the red versus blue, she is probably not going to continue to stay in Michigan and practice because she cannot practice her profession, okay? Because she is in danger at all times that at the whim of the legislature in Michigan, 1 week she could be okay performing a surgery that's necessary to save a woman's life, and the next week she could be jailed for it. So, when you talk to people...
Well, to save a woman's life, there's no state in the country that has a law saying you cannot save a woman's life and perform a procedure to save her life.
I forgot you spend most of your time in Fox News land. You don't know about the women who have died across the South in the last 6 months because doctors are afraid to perform a D&C, even though the baby is dead and causing sepsis.
All right, send me the article. Send me the stories. I can't comment because okay, I haven't seen the story.
But see, you don't hear about stuff like that. People who live in the right-wing media bubble do not hear about things like that. They don't hear about it. And that is disturbing to me because, maybe those people would make a different choice.
From my perspective, I'm concerned because I think it's fear-mongering because I don't believe there's any state in the country that would charge a doctor with a crime for saving a woman's life.
Yes, that is happening, Bob. It is happening. It is happening in Texas.
So
it is. I'm sorry to tell you.
Nope. I'm sorry to hear that. But from the perspective of the podcast, send me that article. We'll talk about it offline, and then you're welcome back anytime. We can have a whole.
And to Allison's point, the threat of that is even worse, right?
Yeah.
All you have to do is bring 1 or 2 cases, and that's it, right? Because who's going to want to even have that come up, right?
That's the trickle down effect.
There's no politician who wants to have that public argument. There's
please,
no politicians
please, Bob.
Argue publicly.
There are politicians who want to have that argument.
No,
there are politicians.
Not when it comes to saving a woman's life.
Please.
Not when it comes to saving a life. It's a life for a life.
It's not always that clear cut, Bob.
But my original point was, if you don't like the abortion laws in Alabama, and I don't know what they are, so I'm just naming a state, then you can move to Tennessee. If you don't like the laws in Tennessee, you can move to Illinois.
Let's just move.
But when you do it at a federal level, it's a lot more difficult to move from the United States to Canada, Mexico, Italy, Japan.
Well, but you know what? If you move to any of those countries, Bob, you wouldn't be in danger of losing your healthcare reproductive rights because they all have them enshrined.
The laws in Europe, in all of the countries, or most of the countries, are significantly more restrictive than they are here.
Not by state. Not by state, Bob.
When it comes to abortion.
Not by state now. You can't say that anymore.
California might be different in California.
But certain states have much more restrictive.
Well,
certain states are much more restrictive, Bob.
It's very few months in most of the European countries where abortion is allowed. Very few months. I get most a trimester.
So don't have doctors that are afraid to practice and doctors that are afraid to do procedures to save a woman's life because they might get thrown in jail like that's happening in Texas. They don't have that.
But they have the right to do that by country. The way our Constitution's written, the states have the right to make the decision, and I think that's fair. All Trump's saying is it's not my decision. I'm the federal government. I'm not going to decide. I'm going to leave it up to the states as the Constitution designed. That's all he's saying. That's all the Supreme Court has said.
Well, in that case, I know that so many people, should we go back to states' rights on other issues then too?
I thought we fought a war. I did think we fought a war. I thought one side won.
We did fight a war for states' rights, and states' rights still exist because they're enshrined in the Constitution. We didn't fight a war.
Wait a second. How did the war go?
I thought we fought the war because there are.
Did the Constitution change as a result? Did the Constitution change as a result of that war?
Yeah, it did. There were amendments to the Constitution.
Okay, and did one of those amendments say that states no longer have rights?
No, but it took away some of the laws that they made.
Well, slavery would have been one of them, obviously.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
I thought that war was about the fact that there are some issues that cannot and should not be left up to the states because they are human rights.
Because we are the United States of America.
And they are human rights. And if not,
we're not talking the speed limit, right? We're not talking a speed limit. We're basically talking your rights as a human being.
All men are created equal. What that meant was all people are created equal.
Men
and women,
maybe.
Right? All people are created equal under the eyes of the Constitution.
Well, they didn't have the right to vote.
First and foremost, slavery was an obvious contradiction to that. Obvious.
A lot of things were an obvious contradiction
the 3/5 rule
that have been corrected along the way.
Right? obvious contradiction to that. Women's right to vote, obvious contradiction to that.
I think that abortion would fall under the quotes of life and liberty, Bob. Anti-abortion.
Okay, life and liberty. So what about the life of the baby?
There is no baby.
There is a baby.
There's no
It's
baby.
alive. It's got a heartbeat. It's got a brain.
There's no baby. This is yeah. There's no baby.
There's a life. There's a heart and a brain.
It is a mass of cells that cannot function as its own person.
All right, we could talk about abortion all day. I think Allyson's point is taken that she's very concerned about women's rights under a Trump administration.
All right, cabinet picks. Is that where we're headed?
And
The permissiveness and pervasiveness of rape culture, not just throughout his administration, but also within his cabinet.
what are you talking about? What are you talking about, Allyson?
All right. let's go down some of these cabinet picks. All right.
Well, one of them's already out.
There's not that many people you could choose from, Allyson, that don't have sexual allegations against them. I mean, the pool of candidates aren't that big at this point. I mean, how many Fox News broadcasters don't have sexual allegations against them?
Yeah.
Let me say this: my top two favorite cabinet picks
All right. Tulsi, let me tell you, Tulsi.
are both Democrats.
Oh, which ones are those?
RFK Jr.
Oh, RFK Jr. is now a Democrat? I thought he swore off
He
the
was
party.
running as a Democrat
Okay,
until
all
the
right.
party wouldn't have him in the primary because they didn't allow Biden to be primaried. However, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, fantastic pick.
No, neither of them
I
are
love
Democrats
them.
anymore.
Neither of them are Democrats.
They are not because the party wouldn't have them.
Well,
Party wouldn't have them.
RFK Jr. has a worm in his brain, and Tulsi Gabbard, she is about as crazy as Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Now, hang on a second.
what are you saying? You're not happy with these picks?
Oh, well, you know.
Those are the two good ones from what I
Those
can
are my
tell.
favorite picks. So let's run down these. Okay, RFK Jr. Health and
Well,
Human
Gates is
Services
out,
Secretary.
right? Before the podcast, he
Yep.
dropped
So,
out.
Attorney General pick is Pam Bondi, a female
Pam Bondi,
from Florida.
At least she was an attorney general of his state.
Pete Hegseth is the defense secretary.
That's
He's a
very
vet,
questionable.
20 years.
That's very questionable.
He's Ivy League educated.
Ivy League, yeah, I grant you
All
that. To run the Department of Defense.
Secretary of State is rumored to be Marco Rubio. I have not seen a confirmation on that yet.
Really? He hasn't announced that?
Honestly, Kevin, I'm just giggling at this whole slate because all of these people are so ridiculous and so unbelievably unqualified to do their jobs.
All right. So we had the bald guy in lipstick stealing women's.
What, Dr.
women's
Oz running
suitcases?
Medicare doesn't make sense?
No!
The bald guy stealing women's dresses, wearing women's dresses.
What
as
was
a
he
nuclear
again?
nuclear regulatory
He was-
agency. I think.
He was nothing, Bob. These are cabinet posts. He was nothing.
Okay. No, he was a cabinet. Okay, and then you had nuclear regulatory, and then you've got. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So little Marco, he's a
Yeah.
hawk, which is kind of unusual since
I'm not.
Trump
I'm
is
not
an
a Rubio
isolationist.
fan. I'm hoping
Okay,
that pick
'cause he's
doesn't
a hawk.
actually happen.
He's a
Yeah.
hawk.
He's a rhino.
He's a rhino. Okay. So
All
that
right.
was, you don't like that pick.
No, if it happens, that's the one that I've got on the list here. That's not confirmed. Susie Wiles, chief of staff. I think that's a good pick.
I don't know her other than she's been.
She did a good
involved
job
in
with the
this campaign.
campaign.
Yeah.
Yeah. And chief of staff, that's kind of a position that's kind of like, yeah, you're coordinating everybody,
Right.
keeping them together.
Yeah, I
It's a
could
good
care
pick.
less about that.
Yeah. Tom Horman, Border Czar,
I don't have that big a problem since I was actually, I guess,
Border Patrol.
he was never confirmed as that, but I guess he was acting as most Trump appointees at the time were acting. ICE. He seems to have a zero. I think he's pretty tough. Zero tolerance.
Get
he's
outta
talking
here.
about shock and awe. So that'll be interesting to see how that rolls through the country.
It will be interesting. It will be entertaining.
I'm pulling out my birth certificate just in case.
Elise Stefanik, ambassador to the UN.
I don't know about that, but whatever.
Keep going.
Mike Waltz.
Gets her out of those committee assignments.
Mike Waltz, no relation to Tim Walz. National Security Advisor.
Yeah, I don't know him too much.
Kristi Noem, Homeland Security.
That's a
meh.
good one.
Yeah. Meh.
That's a good one.
Hopefully
It's
we don't
interesting
have
that he
any
picked
dogs
North
on
Dakota and South
protection.
Dakota, the two governors of those two states.
Yeah, well, it's like, and here's the thing. It doesn't matter if it's a Democrat or Republican in the House. They're making picks that aren't going to hurt them from a political perspective, right? So lots of Florida picks for Republicans because, they're easily replaced with other Republicans. If you're a Democrat, you're going to, pick people from safe districts of California or safe governorships and that sort of thing. The thing about Florida is when you take one of their senators or representatives, the governor can just replace them. That makes it easy.
Yeah.
Tulsi Gabbard,
Tulsi.
Director of National
Well,
Intelligence,
you don't think she's a Russian spy, obviously.
former Congresswoman, war vet.
That's all BS, right?
Most importantly, non-interventionalist. Let's get out of war, funding wars. Doug Burgum, Interior Minister.
Drill, baby, drill. Drill,
Yep.
baby, drill.
Linda McMahon.
Linda McMahon, that's a good one. I like that one. I'm glad she came back. She was SBA administrator before.
She was small business. Now she's education secretary.
Now she's
The
education.
fact that they want to do away with the NEA makes me comfortable with that pick. Otherwise, I think what does she got to do with education? But
Well, Dana White's going to be
Deputy Chief of
treasurer.
Staff is Miller.
I think Dana White's going to be treasurer because Trump
Well,
likes
he's
the
got a lot of money.
WWE and UFC. Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
You know what I love about all of these picks, guys? Is that all of these people are so singularly unqualified to do their jobs and the wrong people to do it, is they are going to screw up so spectacularly that they are going to look so they're going to look so stupid that they make Trump look like the idiot that he is.
Everything's going to be fine.
Well, the intent is to destroy these institutions. I mean,
Everything's going to be fine.
clearly. Bob, don't you agree that the intent is to have a significantly smaller government and destroy these institutions?
Yes, the intent is to have a significantly smaller government. That said, not to destroy the institutions. We still need health and human
Bob,
services.
look who
We
he's
still
bringing
need health
in.
and human
These people don't
services.
know anything about that.
We're always going to need a defense secretary and a defense department. We're going to always need a border czar and a border. The UN is still going to exist. We're not destroying everything.
You brought in a fracking CEO
fixing
as energy in our energy department.
Okay. So what do you want? What do you want? Like a battery CEO?
Sure, why not?
What do you want?
Probably somebody a little less swampy than a fracking CEO to run our energy department.
Who would be less swampy?
Somebody less swampy than a
How
billionaire.
about a whole slate of people that are actually interested in doing something for the people of this country as opposed to enriching and themselves and doing something for themselves?
You don't think cheap energy would be good for this country? I mean, look, like Ford. But if you read stories in the last 3 months, especially the ones recently, GM, Ford, Dodge, Chrysler, look at what our laws have done to their companies when it comes to electric vehicles. They can't sell them. They've got thousands and thousands of these things sitting on the lot, not being sold, and they made them because our government told them to and gave them a little extra funding to do so, and now they're sitting there and they've got less capacity to produce the vehicles that people want. And there's cases where they've had to mark these things down by tens of thousands of dollars cheaper than what they cost to get them off of their lots. It's not good for the country to force private business or coax private business through political means for an agenda. It's just not.
Flip that and say, in my work with a large industrial company, that there are lots of people and the demand is huge for electric equipment and heavy equipment. The problem that they are having is we have not invested enough in the infrastructure to support e-mobility in this country. There are not enough charging stations, and the ones that do exist, and when companies want to replace their entire fleet of heavy industrial trucks with electric trucks, they can't do it because the municipalities can't sell them enough electricity to charge their trucks overnight. And so this is now an investment issue where we need to be investing in more charging stations. We need to be investing in more solar and wind to and wind and solar batteries to be able to to sell the electricity to the principality, so they can sell it to the companies to charge their vehicles.
You're
here's the
absolutely
thing.
right, Allison. And again, I know our country doesn't care what the rest of the world is doing, but they're way ahead of us in this regard as
But
far
here's
as
the thing,
electronic
right?
vehicles.
So
Every country I go to,
we've
all the
cut back
cabs
our
are
we've
EV. Everything is going
Mr.
EV.
Fracking comes in and becomes the head of energy. What are the chances that Mr. Fracking is going to drive investment in electric charging stations in this country, or in wind or solar? What are the
we've
chances
cut
of
back
that?
the ability on coal.
We're going back.
Zero.
We don't have coal plants anymore, right? Or very few of them. It's hurt our ability to make electricity. We've been a little more friendly towards nuclear power lately, which I think will help a lot in producing that electricity. But if we don't produce more electricity and find inexpensive ways to produce the electricity in large amounts, how are you going to have an electric fleet? How are you going to be able to do that? You can't.
Wind and solar,
We've continued
wind
to
and solar are the
retard,
cheapest ways
for
to
lack
do
of a
it.
better way to
Bob.
put it, our ability to produce lots of electricity. 30 years ago, do you remember rolling blackouts or rolling brownouts? They happen today all the time, especially in states like California.
What does that have to do with fracking?
Fracking's natural gas, right? So we do have
That's
natural
heat.
gas producing, but yes,
I think we have natural gas excess. I think we export a lot of natural gas in this country.
yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do. So this idea that we're not producing this stuff is just BS. We're producing more of it than ever, which again is kind of crazy. But all of that,
Solar and wind does not produce the same amount of energy that
all of oil and gas,
a natural gas
are
or coal-fired electric plant would.
oil and gas are international products that our prices are set not within this country, believe it or not. So yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens with these picks. I'm not encouraged. Like Allyson said, we're going to have to step up our game to stay on top of this and to do everything we can to kind of make it work. I did read something in the Politico, an opinion piece. I don't have who did it, but as far as concern for what maybe I'm feeling and some others are feeling, I thought this kind of hit it. And it says, I'm not just going to keep saying that I think millions of people have never experienced real political disorder, so they take liberal democracy for granted and frankly don't take politics very seriously. They're entertained by Trump. They think he's funny and maybe he'll make eggs a little cheaper and also drive annoying coastal elite insane, and that's kind of it for plenty of people.
Yep.
And the stuff about Trump really is, and what he stands for, the system-threatening part of it, just doesn't even register
Nope, they
because
just
it
don't
seems
care.
too remote to feel real. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any reason to expect that elections will be formally abolished by 2028 in the way that some wild-eyed commentators and social media have suggested. I think there is a moderate chance that the fairness of our elections will be severely undermined by then, and I think there's a very high chance that some of our core institutions of American democracy will be damaged in ways that have significant long-term consequences. Put differently, I don't think this election itself is the end of American democracy. I do think it is the beginning of the greatest test American democracy has had since the Civil War of its resilience, and the outcome of that test is not determined, and there is a range of probabilities ranging from totally catastrophic to merely somewhat bad. That's kind of how I feel. Allyson, do you kind of agree with that?
I agree, and Bob, I've been waiting to say this. You know, my husband agrees with you 100%. He just kind of shrugs his shoulders and says, "Yeah, this guy talks a big game, Trump, but I don't think he's going to be able to do any of the shit that he talks about. We've got stuff in place to prevent it." And you know, I'm the emotional opposite of that, and I lean towards the catastrophic side, Kevin. But again, I have a different perspective. You know, as a woman and as a Democrat, I have a different perspective. But I hope my husband is right. I hope he doesn't tank the economy. I hope my house value doesn't go in the toilet.
Absolutely. I'm rooting for him. I mean, I'm rooting for the country. I'm rooting for him to do good. I'm not rooting against him, which, again, is a little different than McConnell saying, I'm not going to do anything. I want good for this country. I'm
Absolutely, and I think that's the difference sometimes, Kevin. Between that's the Democratic, optimism, is that even in the face of this, as one might think is the worst thing possible, like we're all like, you know what, we just don't want to lose what's important to this country in those institutions, and we want the ability to still be there to fix it when they're done burning it down.
No, I would love 4 years from now if the country was in a better place. Absolutely. I don't want him to fail. Why would I want him to fail? But that still doesn't mean I have real concerns. And I think the second term, I think a lot of the guardrails might not be there this time, which then, and I read a lot about his first administration, and there were a lot of people stepping in his way. And the Supreme Court doesn't appear to want to step in his way anymore. And he's basically gotten away with everything he did the first administration, and all those cases are gone.
And he's going to have the Senate and the House on his side.
Yeah. So I do believe in our checks and balances and institutions, but I do think it's going to be a pretty strong test of all of that. And I think it's more uncertain than any time in my life.
Yeah.
That's all I would say. I mean, do you not agree with that, Bob?
Reminds me of a quote. I
Yeah.
think it was Alexander Tytler. A democracy cannot exist as a permanent form of government. It can only exist until the majority discovers it can vote itself largesse out of the public treasury. After that, the majority always votes for the candidate promising the most benefits. With the result, democracy collapses because of the loose fiscal policy ensuing. Always to be voted by a dictatorship and a monarchy.
Well, I'm not arguing that we're not, and I don't even think it's spending. I think people don't feel represented for all the reasons we've kind of discussed on this podcast over time, just the way our political system is now, and I get all of that. The question is, what fills that vacuum? And that never turns out well.
Right.
History proves that never turns out well. And if he's able to reform the system and get through this, God bless him.
I saw Jordan Peterson last night on a TV show, and he's Canadian, for those who don't know. And he said the thing that always impresses him about America is its ability to reinvent itself. Mm-hmm. Whenever you think we're kind of like on the ropes, we reinvent ourselves. We figure it out.
Yeah, that's the optimism.
Exactly
I agree.
what's going to happen. We're figuring it out.
Or we're not.
Changing. We're going to figure it out. And we have to. I said it earlier, our interest on our debt is as much as we're spending on the military right now. We have to cut.
Nobody's talking about reducing the debt, Bob, by the way.
We have to.
All that's going to fund is tax cuts to the people who don't need it.
Correct.
We have to reduce the debt.
That's
no,
what I've heard.
No, that's not Doge. Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk.
All of Doge is about taking that money and returning it through tax cuts to the billionaires.
Half the country doesn't pay federal taxes right now, Bob. So, and those are the people. A lot of those are the people who voted for him. So, tell me what benefit they're going to get. Tell me.
Jeff Bezos paid.
They're going to get less
taxes.
Services.
Jeff Bezos paid taxes.
I'm saying
tell me he didn't pay anything.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying half the country.
Who?
I'm saying
who didn't pay who didn't pay
the people
taxes?
who don't make much money don't pay taxes.
Poor people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Federal taxes, anyway.
Even if they come in with Doge and swipe, and if they take a machete to everything in the federal government, Bob, your taxes are not going to go down. Sorry.
No. We got to reduce the debt. I'm okay with my taxes not going down at this point.
The debt's not going down either. That money is going to go right back into Elon Musk's pocket. And if you don't think that, then you have been living under a rock.
If Elon Musk gets richer,
self-promoting, self-interested, billionaire, and one of the things that I didn't bring up today is I read a very interesting.
If government spending decreases by 25%, I don't care if Elon Musk gets richer by 100%. I really don't.
Really?
We have to cut our debt.
He's not going to reduce the debt. That's what I'm telling you.
He's making rockets for like 20% of what NASA makes rockets for.
He could cut the government by 25%, and zero of that savings is going to the debt. That's what I'm telling you. It's not going to the debt. It's going to go in his pocket.
No. If the government spending is cut by 25% and taxes don't move,
And the debt doesn't move.
we should be paying down our debt. Like our interest, we're paying as much in interest as we are for our entire military industrial complex. That's a ridiculous amount of interest. It's going to get worse because our debt keeps getting worse.
On the debt, but this is not the way that's going to reduce it. He is not. Elon Musk and his friends at Doge are not going to reduce the debt. That's not what they're
lower
going
the
to do.
corporate tax rate to 15%.
So here's the thing. They're going, if they can cut spending, which is the point, and waste, right? You cut waste and spending.
Yeah.
Let's just say taxes stay the same.
That's not the plan.
You pay down the debt.
Okay.
But it's not going to pay down the debt. The money is going to disappear into his pocket.
No, it's
All right,
it's
Bob
not.
thinks they're going to pay down the debt. We don't. So
I think this is a really excellent opportunity right here for a bet.
That's where Clinton did a great job.
that's what I was
right?
thinking, Allyson,
Clinton,
too. Is the debt going to be more or less when Trump is the term is done?
And here's the thing.
What do we want to bet? No, we're going to bet, Bob.
No, well, I'm not.
We're going to bet. No, you're not going to
look,
bet?
Look,
You
I
talked,
said it.
you
I
talked
said it to
about
you earlier before the podcast. I said it to you earlier. For the last 30 years, what we were doing, did it work? Or did it make things worse from a debt and spending perspective? This is different. Let's try it and see what happens.
Well, we were actually almost out of debt at the end of Clinton's administration, and then
Clinton did a good job.
Then we got
Clinton,
into wars,
Clinton and the split.
tax cuts, Bush tax cuts, and
Clinton and the split in power because he didn't have the House and the Senate.
so let's say the last
It worked
25
out.
years, yeah.
After Clinton, it got ridiculous.
Yeah. So do you want to bet?
This is
Is
a
the
great
debt going
place
to be
for a bet.
more or less
Look,
when
I
Trump
would
leaves
I would
office?
make the
If he
bet
leaves
if
office.
part of the bet was the agreement that the Democrats don't challenge and there's no court cases.
So you're not
against
willing to bet.
what they want to do, but there's going to be.
You're not willing to bet that the debt will go. No. All right. We tried.
All right.
I know we did.
I'm not willing to bet
All right.
because of that reason.
All right. It's the
Otherwise I
Democrats. All right. It's the Democrats.
It's the court.
This
It's the
again,
lawyers and the
this again
way the
is
system works.
my concern with that whatever happens, nobody's going to own up on the people who voted for him
I just
as
gave
far
Clinton
as
credit.
what he did. I'm saying Trump and the people who voted for him they're going to have a very difficult time given the cognitive dissonance that we've seen
I've
to own and Trump's never going to admit. He's not going to give
I've said
1 inch.
multiple times
He's
that
not going to
Trump
give
spent
1
way
inch
too much
to
money
anything.
in his first term.
He's never admitted a mistake.
He's
He's
spent
never
way too much money in
admitted,
his first term.
apologized. So
And
he's not
probably
going to give
spend
an
way
inch.
too much money in this term.
But
But I'll guarantee you this: he didn't spend $1 billion in $20 million in 3 months.
That's because nobody wanted to give him any money to begin with, Bob.
He's still got money left over from his campaign, and he won.
All right. Well, I think we should wrap it up.
Yeah.
Unless we have anything else to say. I think
We've got a ton to talk over. We can schedule another podcast. We got like another 3 hours.
We got another 3 hours.
We haven't even talked about what we were.
I don't know.
drinking yet.
I don't know if we have any listeners left at this point.
No.
If you're still with us, God bless you. We appreciate you riding this out. Hopefully, we added something to your thinking, and at least we're mildly entertaining. I think it was a very good discussion. We're all just trying to be. We're all friends. We're all just trying to be honest with each other, which I greatly appreciate.
All right.
Oh my God, Bob, you can turn off your gay anthem.
Did you have the girls dancing around the house to this? I don't even want to see what that was like on an election night.
I did the night before that he lost to Biden. The girls are jumping around. dancing.
Jeez.
This time,
I worry about that.
I do too. I do too. But you know what? I know Bob's wife, and I know that she's doing the yeoman's work of keeping them away from him at times like these.
here's the thing I wanted to mention that I didn't mention, actually, that I really wanted to talk about. We can make it real quick. Is there anything to Joe Biden going to vote dressed in all red?
Like he was throwing the support behind Trump.
Exactly. That's exactly.
He wore the MAGA hat. He did.
But Jill Biden, not Joe, Jill Biden went to vote dressed in all red. And she didn't do any interviews or anything, but she went in, dressed in red, voted, walked out. She was on camera.
It was like a bad juju. We had she was threw a curse on or something.
Oh yeah, I don't think she was happy with the way all of this went down. I'm sure she wasn't.
Yeah.
I think she was sending a signal, like she didn't care for Kamala. Just
No, you might be right. I have no idea.
So back to me, when I voted here in Tennessee, I did kind of look around at the polls, and I was trying to figure out who was going to vote for who, and there were a lot of women there, and it wasn't that well protected to the point where you couldn't see how people were voting.
Oh God, Bob!
So I was like walking around
It's like walking around.
and looking,
It's like a.
and I saw two women voting for Trump.
And you're like, that's it.
I knew it right then.
You knew it right then.
Trump's winning Tennessee. Not that I didn't know anyway.
There's a lot of women who voted with their pocketbook more so than you know. They're the ones that are really struggling, Bob. And
This is twice, Allyson. Twice against that guy.
yeah.
There you
I know.
go. And more women vote than men.
I know.
There you go.
I know. There are not. There.
I'm not saying that you should vote about just on your gender, but there you
Yet,
go.
enough women with college educations. We're getting there because close to 60% of college enrollment right now is women. So we'll get there one of these days. But shout out to my 98% of women with college degrees who voted for Kamala.
Well, I'm done voting for women.
I think. I think.
I did it twice.
Here's the thing.
Just kidding.
We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. The people voting for the Republicans are different now than who was voting for them 20 years ago. And you go 20 years earlier, and people are different. 20 years earlier, people are different. That's a good thing. We're going to continue to kind of shift as a country to figure out what works for the parties and people. And it's going to keep us in a spot where we continue to succeed. As long as we don't give away our money.
Because I look at Gen Z, I look at my daughter and her friends and how different they are and how they approach the world, even from, myself, people our age. And I look at them and I go, you know what? We're going to be okay.
We just need to get over this hump.
Yes, agreed, Kevin.
That's what I'm not concerned about that generation. I'm concerned about getting over this hump right now, so that there will be that future.
It's going to be fine. As long as we don't keep
everything's
bombing
fine.
Russia.
That's the wrap up.
As long
Everything's
as Biden doesn't
fine.
keep sending missiles to Russia.
Let me show you the picture of the dog with the dumpster fire in the back.
Sleep well tonight. Everything's
Everything's
fine. All right. Thanks for joining us, Allison. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys
Been
for
a
having
lot
me
of
on.
fun.
This has been great.
Come
Thanks
back.
everyone for
Join
listening.
us again, please.
And we'll talk to everyone soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.